2, 1, action.
3, 2, 1, action.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural WTF Wednesday episode. Here's the idea, everybody. We're going to be doing these episodes every 2 weeks, starting off every 2 weeks. We're going to be recommending an amazing movie for y'all to stream, and then you can come here to the Frida Cinema's YouTube channel, and you can you can watch this discussion between me and a very special guest. Speaking of very special guests, on this very first episode to discuss this amazing, amazing movie, we have Mr. Miguel Rodriguez from Horrible Imaginings Film Festival. Welcome, Miguel.
Yo! I can't wait to talk about this movie. It's a childhood favorite.
We keep just saying the movie, but I'm going to say the words. The Pit, a.k.a.
The Pit.
Exactly. Yes. Also
was it like Hell something?
It's also known as Teddy, apparently, in some.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yeah. Well, so there was a novelization or something called Teddy, I think.
Oh, that's so interesting because I can see like just the aesthetic of this film. I can just see as a paperback on my shelf. You know what I mean? Like that I'll let my eventual children read. Miguel, what is your experience with this film that hopefully everyone who's watching this has just finished watching The Pit? If you didn't watch The Pit, I don't know why you're watching this, but please feel free to watch this. I think it's interesting to even talk about this movie if you haven't seen it. And maybe we'll even sell the people on watching this movie.
So my experience with this actually inspires some questions in me. So back in the day, network TV stations used to have these special like slotted times like Shock Theater or Chiller Theater where they would show horror movies for in Baltimore in like the late 80s to maybe the late 90s.
Yeah.
It was Channel 54 Baltimore. Anyone who is either from or familiar with the Baltimore area and also old might know what I'm talking about. But on Saturdays, there was Saturday morning cartoons, and then there was Black Belt Theater, and finally there was Nightmare Theater.
Right.
Now, here's what both Black Belt Theater and Nightmare Theater were probably the same, people working on it, programming for it, would get, it's kind of like the radio now where you feel like you hear the same, like maybe 10 songs over and over again.
Right.
Nightmare Theater, I feel like I saw the same 10 movies over and over again, and I could name a bunch of them. It was Vamp with Grace Jones, Chud, I saw 50,000 times because some like more well-known ones like that, right? Even The Thing made it on there a couple of times.
Right.
John Carpenter's The Thing. But another one that was in very frequent rotation. I must have seen this movie, 6 or 7 times as it played live on Nightmare Theater over those years, was The Pit. And so it makes me really curious, like, why The Pit? Because I grew up with it in that way, I figured this is one of those kind of everyday movies that everybody knows.
Right.
But it turns out that's not really the case. There's a lot of people who have not seen The Pit.
Mm-hmm.
But me and my brothers saw it like at a really young age because we would watch like, the Smurfs and then Gummy Bears and then The Pit. So
Bears.
So this is a bizarre movie, and even I remember even being younger thinking it was weird watching it, and right from the very first frame, this movie starts unlike I don't think any other movie I've ever seen. But I might let you give me your initial take before we start talking about that.
So this one's gonna stick with me for real. Like I had heard of The Pit somewhat recently in the last couple of years, and I do have to say that it kind of went back and forth between. I imagine when I watch movies as a programmer how they will play for audiences, and I thought, oh man, this one will do gangbusters because there's so much like funny or whether unintentionally funny stuff, like the performance of the child or the kid, I should say, who was almost he's basically a teenager almost.
Tom Sawyer.
Yeah, his performance is so effective because it's so weird but and then I would be laughing at it sometimes. But then my initial or my what I'm really taking away from this movie is how like it kind of put me off kind of towards the end, where I was like, oh, this is like really dark and kind of gross, and I'm like, I don't think I like this. And then like the last scene happens, and I'm like, no, I do like it. It's fun. So I went back and forth with being like grossed out by it. I think it's a perfect movie to open the WTF Wednesday series on, because it truly was like, what am I watching? I have a question for you. If you had to just categorize this movie as one genre, now there's like 5 genres that the film is, what would you call the 1981 film The Pit?
Bizarro.
Bizarro. There you go.
So that's a fairly newish genre,
Yeah,
I will say. There is it sprouted up in literature. And I actually don't even know if The Pit really fits that, and writers of Bizarro might dispute me.
Sure.
But I think the way this is presented, as much as the content of the narrative itself would fit in Bizarro. Again, I really want to talk about that opening scene.
Yeah.
But not just the opening scene, the closing scene. So people are seeing this discussion after they see the movie.
Right.
So we don't have to worry about spoilers, I guess.
Spoilers abound.
Because that, I'm not going to mention it now, but the last few frames of this film really throw a monkey wrench into anything you might have thought was going on to start with. So yeah, all of that. And you brought it up perfectly. Like everything that is actually truly disturbing and gets under your skin with this film, you wonder if like that was the intention.
Sure. Because
it's like, well, what's the horror? Is it the monsters? Is it what this kid is doing? Or is it just how nasty and lascivious and lecherous this kid is?
Right.
And just his gross like fascination with women and little girls and all this, there's a lot of stuff that's just really gross.
Yeah.
That isn't part of the horror per se. So, and for me, that's the stuff that really gets under my skin. Oh, and my daughter is asking me to change her diaper. But you want to come say hi? Come here.
Wow. Our
no,
cameo.
Away.
Oh no cameo. No, yeah. It's just, so to speak to what you were saying, it's really interesting that it's like a creature feature, but also like a creepy kid movie, and also a creepy doll movie with the bear. Like it's like a hat on a hat on a hat, and not without craft, I suppose. It was effective when it wanted to be, or I don't even know what to say about this movie. We're just gonna go through it. First of all, Kino did a really good job with the 2K restoration that we're streaming online. My internet's really bad, so I watched it at 240p, so I felt like I was watching it on VHS, which is great. But I saw some actual 1080p footage of it, and they did an awesome job. So the thing you just watched was a 2K restoration. Again, if you haven't watched it yet, go check it out. But so this kid is like receiving baths from his babysitter, and he's 12 years old. That was very interesting.
Yeah, and that comes later in the movie too. But
Yeah.
What is going on in those? Okay, let's back up a bit. All right.
Sure.
So one thing I find a little bit perplexing, not so much when I was seeing it as a kid, but watching it now.
Yeah.
It's just not made clear.
Yeah.
What is Jamie's deal? Like,
yeah.
Is he autistic? Is he
Sure.
just like, what is Jamie's deal?
Right.
And we don't know. And I don't know if that was just an incomplete character building of him, or if that was, a really effective part of it, because we really don't know much about him other than he's just weird.
Sure. And they don't make him particularly, they don't really try to make him particularly likable weird.
No. His parents are asses too.
Yeah, his parents leave him alone for like, I was trying to do the math of how long the babysitter was there. She's there like 13 nights or something before he ends up killing her, which is like the most harrowing scene. This is a movie that features a scene in the background of your Zoom where he pushes an old lady in a wheelchair into a pit of trala logs, which are monsters that he are alive. But the most disturbing part is watching that babysitter, who really hasn't done anything wrong, be eaten by these, and these are like close-ups of her being eaten by these trala logs, which I think is horrible. But he sits, he sits at the edge of the babysitter's bed and says stuff like, "Oh, I was just watching you sleep," and she gives him a bath. And I think there's a scene where he takes pictures of her, and then he shows the pictures to Teddy, and then Teddy the bear says, "I'm gonna look at these a lot."
I hate that.
That is
all of that stuff is gross. You know what? So I will tell you, for me, the grossest scene,
Sure.
and what makes it even harder is it's repeated twice, and that's where we can talk about that opening scene as well.
Sure.
Is so at one point, Jamie's bullied by folks at school, and there's one Halloween party, and he ends up tricking a younger, I don't know, like we're talking middle school age kids here,
Right.
tricking one of them to go to the pit in the woods, and this girl, because Halloween, is wearing like a tutu.
Yep.
And he shows her the monsters, she faints, and before he feeds her to the Trolologs, he takes off her tutu.
Yeah.
And it is that slow removing of the tutu that I think is the grossest scene in this movie.
Yeah, it's a movie with stiff competition of what the grossest scene is. Like I said, where there was a pit in my stomach.
I see what you did there.
Was of course the babysitter being eaten, but like the sum of the movie, I feel like the scene where we have the montage of him pushing the people into the pit, where the movie's really heightening. The music playing during that scene is like doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop. It's like they clearly made a choice there, unless you believe that this film is purely inept, which I do not. They make a choice there to make it seem goofy and fun, that this fun character is pushing these people who definitely deserve this into the pit. And I'm like, whoa, I'm not on board.
Well, I will tell you regarding the opening scene that I keep bringing up.
Yes.
The reason I keep bringing it up is, I saw this many times as a kid. It always came on TV, so it always followed, a commercial break or whatever. It starts like by throwing you into the middle of this Halloween party scene.
Yeah.
Which it turns out is a bizarre like preview of a scene that actually happens later in the movie.
Yeah, that was weird.
And I cannot for the life of me figure out why they did that. And forever I thought it was like just a screw up, like, oh, this is clearly, but yeah, when it came out on VHS, well, it was out on VHS. When I bought it finally on VHS, which I still have, same thing. That weird drop you into the middle of that preview scene is still how it starts. And the DVD that came out, I forget what it's a double with. It came out on DVD a few years ago with another film. And that had it too. So I suspect that that's just the choice they made, was opening it with that weird preview of the Halloween party.
I thought the same thing, where I was like, it almost felt like it was a reel that played out of place if you were watching a film or something. And the reveal of it isn't particularly interesting. It would have been better to just open the movie with the creepy kid, then slowly put the hats on top of the hats on top of the hats. Like, oh, and then there's a pit. And then, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I thought that was very odd too. I thought there was going to be a bigger payoff to that, and there just wasn't.
I think overall, one of the oddest things about this film in general, and it kind of wraps up some of the things we've already talked about, is transitions.
Sure.
A tonal transition, a transition from scene to scene. Yeah. The way it opens, like I think the first shot you see is one of the kids in a pirate suit, which isn't even, Jamie. So
right.
It doesn't introduce things in a logical way that you're used to with films. When the teddy bear comes into play, it's just he's talking to Teddy, and Teddy answering. It's like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And then another very bizarre transition scene is near the end when the pit is discovered.
Sure.
And the town mobilizes to kill the Trolologs. That entire scene feels like a completely different movie.
Yeah. It reminded me of like a Night of the Living Dead or something. Like it was like Romero took over for a couple of minutes and was like,
yes,
buddies from Pittsburgh, and we're gonna go and shoot these Trolologs. So yeah, I don't think the movie has a lack of plot by any means.
Nope.
I think there was plenty of plot for the 90 minutes.
There's too much plot.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe too much. But let's talk real quick about that last scene. It genuinely took me by surprise. In a movie that like a lot of things surprised me by, I was like, it took me a while to realize, like, I'm like, oh wow, they're going through a forest. They're going back to literally the same set that we've seen the pit in this whole which is, obviously not in the world of the movie supposed to be the same place, but or is it, and that final reveal and that final line reading was crazy. I was like, did we got one take? We couldn't do 2 or 3 takes. I think she's supposed to say like, I know, and she reads it like, I know. You're like, I know. Okay. And then just the credits coming down, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful ending.
Yeah, I mean, and like, why did he not see that push coming? Because she gets up very slowly and walks behind. It's like, you've been here before, Jamie. Like, it's you should probably not be that close to the edge of the pit. You've fed a few trawl logs in your day.
My favorite bit of weird filmmaking was when the little girl who tricks him with the bike. I think that's the first part of the montage. I like how she walks towards him speaking, does not look down, and just walks directly into the pit. And then there's no screaming or any other noise. She just falls into the pit.
Just jumps right in, yeah.
And instead of hearing her scream, which, very disturbing and all, I just thought it was an odd choice to be like, she just falls in, there's just no more noise, and it's just like the trawl logs, you don't hear them or anything.
There's no telling like how much time they had to film some of this stuff, and I've never seen a making of The Pit. It does join a list of very interesting Canuxploitation or Canadian horror films, including some great Canadian made-for-TV stuff like Pin. But the character Jamie, played by Sam Snyders, and his relationship with that Teddy, one scene that always sticks out to me is there's one scene where Teddy, without Jamie in the room, turns his head and looks toward the camera and kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's the only indication that maybe Teddy's not in Jamie's head, but there's no other clue. Like the rest of the times, it's kind of like presented as if, this kid's kind of bonkers talking to his teddy bear and the teddy bear's answering. But like, so nothing is a fully formed concept.
Yeah.
It's I guess the teddy bear is really a sentient teddy bear. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if the pit and the trawl logs are real, why wouldn't the teddy bear be real? I mean, that's the logic I was following. So
why not? Yeah.
I think to sum it up, I think this is like just such an odd movie, and Sammy Snyders, who played the kid, he was so genuinely odd and creepy. I would put him next to like the Grady twins or Damien or something.
Yes.
Like, but him getting pushed in at the end almost feels like a happy ending, and like I'm like, okay, good. You know what I mean? Like that's the type of movie this made me into a bad person rooting for a 12-year-old to be pushed into a pit by the end of it, and I was like, I hate this movie for that reason, but I really genuinely think it was a great start to the WTF series.
Well, and it's a great ending too. Like one thing you've got to say about the movie is it really kind of comes full circle for Jamie, and in a true like 70s and 80s fashion, that scene ends on a freeze frame, which I always love.
Right. and then just the credits over it. It's great. I have one more question for you, Miguel. If you could remake The Pit at any point in history,
oh my God,
who would you get to direct it, and or who do you have to star as the child?
Oh, okay. So I think I would want a David Lynch directed Pit.
Okay.
I think for sure. Like I'm thinking of rabbits, like to have Teddy kind of rabbit sized.
Yeah.
So David Lynch would be a great director for The Pit. Now for the kid.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a hard one.
And it can be any actor from now younger, it doesn't have to,
I think it would be one of the kids, maybe even the lead little boy with the bowl cut from Village of the Damned with the really bright blonde hair and the white glowing eyes.
Yeah. I think what you just pitched is a very effective film. I think if I watched the David Lynch version of The Pit, would I be off base here? I think this movie is ripe for a remake. I think that you could remake it, maybe take one of the genres away. I hate to say it, but maybe Teddy goes away, or maybe the creepy. I mean, a good-hearted kid who's being tricked by this teddy bear to do the pit stuff makes sense. I think one of those three elements needs to go away, and it can't be the pit. I think the pit is actually really interesting.
No, the pit has to stay. I mean, it's the titular pit, by the way. I'd hate to get rid of Teddy because
Yeah.
For so many people, myself included, Teddy is one of the most disturbing and perplexing parts of this film.
Yeah.
And like I said, with a Lynchian touch, I think would be very, very interesting. But the biggest question for me about this film that I think is not necessarily intentional is, what is it trying to say? Like, is Jamie really supposed to be unlikable? Like, he clearly is, because it's hard to tell if they meant for him to be, or if we're supposed to sympathize with him as an outsider or an underdog.
Right.
But he's just so, like, is he, you know, it makes me wonder about the writer or some of the creators, like what they sympathize with, or were they trying to portray him as really gross?
Yeah, I think that's the thing you have to figure out how to cut from this movie to make it quote unquote better. But there's a, you know, why would you want it to be better? You know, I love this what it was. So
I just think it needs a clearer purpose. You know, it's okay if he's gross and unlikable. In fact, that could be very interesting. I just don't know if that's the point. It's hard to tell if that's the point. And you know, the purpose should be something we could identify or talk about, or maybe it's more fun that we don't know. But yeah, I think, well, you know, a number of great creators could give it a point. Like, can you imagine like Robert Eggers doing The Pit?
Yeah, it's like 1:3:3 aspect ratio, black and
yes.
white. Yeah, no. Miguel, thanks for joining us. I don't know what The Pit represents, but I'm glad we tried to get through it. This is a really great start to this series. If you guys haven't streamed The Pit for some reason and watched this whole thing, I don't know how you wouldn't want to stream the movie now. Please go to our website, thefridacinema.org. We're going to have it up there. You'll find it on there very easily. Just hit the streaming button, and then you'll have The Pit. There's a lot of other cool 80s horror movies there. I think we have Rawhead Rex. We have Parasite, not the Parasite from last year, but Parasite. And then
Space Parasite.
There's a Richard Franklin film on there with not with Demi Moore. You guys will see it when you go on the page. But anyways, Miguel, thank you for joining us. This was a really fun way to kick off the series, and we will be announcing very soon what the next movie will be in 2 weeks. Thanks, Miguel.
Anytime. Talk to you later.
See ya. Thanks.